For years ago, to save Mo Yao, I tested the poison on myself. My organs were damaged beyond repair, and no medicine could save me. He was forced to marry me to repay the debt. For years later, the woman he loved returned to the capital, suffering from the same deadly poison. He held the only antidote and, without hesitation, gave it to her. Later, I was reborn into another's body. I heard that on that night, as blood rain fell, that unattainable young marquis carried his wife's body and knocked on the door of every physician in the city. The winter in Yunjing was so cold it made my heart tremble. I sat by the window, holding a hand warmer, gazing at the plum blossoms in full bloom nearby. I never thought I would live to see such a scene again. Half a month ago, I had been a wandering ghost, with no memory of my time as a spirit. When I regained the ability to think, I had already been attached to the dead daughter of Duke Xiao. As Xiao Ningxi's body lay in its coffin, just as they were about to close the lid, someone cried out, "The young lady is alive." That was how I avoided being buried alive at the very moment of my birth. The people said that Duke Xiao's accumulated good deeds had moved heaven, allowing his daughter to return from the dead. Seeing the Duke and his wife's aged, haggard faces, like survivors of a catastrophe, I could not bring myself to say, "The one inside this body is not Xiao Ningxi." A cold wind blew in, and I couldn't help coughing twice. Wu Hua quickly closed the window and brought me my medicine. Oh dear, the young lady was perfectly fine in Luzhou. How did you catch a cold as soon as you arrived in Yunjing? I smiled. Perhaps it's just a bit of acclimatization. In 3 days, it's the Marquis of Xuanyang's wife's birthday banquet. I heard that the young lady has risen from the dead, so she specially wrote a note inviting you. My heart sank. Wu Hua continued to chatter. And that young Marquis Mo hasn't remarried since his wife passed away. I hear that many unmarried ladies have been invited to this banquet. They might be looking for a match for him. If my cold hasn't gotten better by then, just send a gift. I coughed lightly. The young lady is blessed by heaven. Perhaps the Marquis's family wants to borrow some of your good fortune. Wu Hua opened a floodgate of words. You don't know, but before he married, young Marquis Mo was the dream of every unmarried lady in Yunjing, from a prestigious family, dashing and powerful. It's said that even General Xia, who is highly favored by the emperor, can't compare. I smiled faintly, my heartstrings faintly stirring. How could I not know how radiant Mo Yao was? If it hadn't been for that life-saving act, I probably would never have had any connection with him. And that young Marquis Mo is quite a romantic. Wu Hua continued. His wife saved his life and then demanded marriage in return. Yet he didn't resent her. He searched everywhere for famous physicians to treat her. On the night she died, he carried her body to every medical clinic in the city, knocking on their doors. Such a tragic love story. I, the protagonist of this tragic love story, couldn't help but smile bitterly. The world had turned this into a tale of romance. Mo Yao was indeed devoted, just not to me. That year, he had been poisoned by an unknown toxin. The only way to save him was to transfer the poison to someone else through a blood transfusion. I decided almost immediately to sacrifice myself. The physician Mo Yao hired told me that the poison wouldn't kill me immediately, but afterward, I would only be kept alive by medicine, and my lifespan would be a matter of fate. To repay my sacrifice, the Marquis of Xuanyang forced Mo Yao to marry me. Naively, I thought he truly wanted me, so I happily married into the Marquis's household. But on our wedding night, he didn't lift my veil. He stood silently before me and gritted out, "Who asked you to save me?" It was then that I learned he already had someone else in his heart. When word spread, everyone said I was shameless, that I had saved him just to trap him into marriage. But I truly wanted him to live. If he had told me earlier that he already loved someone, I would never have agreed to the marriage. Thinking of this, I felt a headache coming on. Su Yangyue returned in the 4th year of our marriage. She and Mo Yao had grown up together and once pledged their love to each other. But Mo Yao's mother disapproved because she was a merchant's daughter, forbade him from seeing her, and drove her out of Yunjing. Later, she came back to the capital, poisoned and near death. Her only wish was to spend her remaining days with Mo Yao, so she moved into the Marquis's mansion. I wasn't surprised. I had never expected to surpass her in Mo Yao's heart. I just remembered the day Mo Yao joyfully told me, "There's a cure," only to give it without hesitation to Su Yangyue. The Xiao mansion was in Lizhou, hundreds of miles from Yunjing. I thought that being far away from Yunjing, far from Mo Yao, was fine. In my new life, I didn't want to have anything more to do with him. But then the emperor heard that not only had Xiao Ningzi come back from the dead, but her long illness also seemed to be improving. So he immediately summoned Duke Xiao back to the capital to resume his court position. Duke Xiao had originally retired to take care of Xiao Ningzi. Now that his daughter was healthy, he had no reason to stay in Lizhou. So, 3 years after my death, I returned to Yunjing. I had no memories of being a ghost, but I could feel the passage of time. 3 years, neither long nor short. Hatred and love had both faded away. This cold came as a timely relief. In the end, I couldn't attend the Marquis of Xuanyang's banquet. Madame Xiao went with her attendants and came back in a sour mood. When I asked why, she said indignantly, "My daughter is not to be matched with a widower." She explained that old Madame Mo, after meeting her, had subtly inquired whether I was betrothed. When she learned I wasn't, she began praising Mo Yao endlessly and even took Madame Xiao to meet him. But when Mo Yao saw her, he showed no courtesy at all and even flirted openly with his concubine in front of her. I was surprised. Mo Yao had always been very proper. How could he be so disrespectful? Since he hadn't remarried, the concubine couldn't be Su Yongyue. After all, Mo Yao often said that only Su Yongyue deserved the title of his wife. Madame Xiao was still upset. I understood why. Duke Xiao was the emperor's own uncle. Having served several generations of emperors, his position and glory far exceeded that of a marquis. Besides, Mo Yao had lost his wife and now had a mistress he doted on. Yet he had set his sights on the only daughter of a duke. To call it a slight would be an understatement. To call it an insult would be more accurate. That young Marquis Mo may be handsome, but he is by no means a good match for a woman. Madame Xiao advised me earnestly, "Don't listen to what others say." This piqued my curiosity, so I asked her why. Madame Xiao sighed. "Everyone in the capital says he's devoted. But if he truly cherished his late wife, would he have let others say she saved his life to force him into marriage? The girl genuinely saved his life. Even if she wanted to become the Marquis's wife, that wouldn't be unreasonable. Yet on their wedding night, he refused to lift her veil, and the whole city mocked her. After she died, he pretends to be so heartbroken. In my opinion, he is the most selfish and cold-hearted one. It's true that the onlooker sees most of the game. It had taken me 4 years to see clearly what others recognized at a glance. Perhaps it was because of this realization that night, I had a dream. In the dream, the night was heavy, snow fell thickly, and Mo Yao carried my lifeless body, running to every medical clinic in Yunjing, calling my name over and over. The quiet snow was covered with chaotic footprints. He knocked on doors, begging desperately, his voice echoing in the alleyways. "Please, save her." When I woke up, I felt dazed. Wu Hua came in, placed a few branches of plum blossoms in a vase, and told me cheerfully about something ridiculous that had happened in the city today. Past events seemed like a fleeting dream. While bedridden, I had read many medical texts, originally hoping to find a cure for the poison. Later, I gradually developed an interest in medicine. Unfortunately, I never had the chance to pursue it further. Now that I had another life, I wanted to study medicine seriously. With Duke Xiao's recommendation, I was accepted as a disciple of Chen Baiguang, the head of the Jishitang Medical Hall. Chen Baiguang was nearly 60, his health failing, and he had long stopped accepting disciples. This time, it was only out of respect for Duke Xiao that he agreed to take me in. So I went to the medical hall every day to study, leaving at dawn and often returning late. After a while, sensing my genuine passion, my master assigned my 3rd senior fellow disciple to guide me. "Little junior sister, you've read medical books before, haven't you? You don't seem like a beginner at all," he remarked as he watched me skillfully grinding herbs. "I've been ill for a long time. It's said that long illness makes a doctor of the patient. I did read quite a few medical classics during my sick years. I remember collecting many medical books back then." Later, Mo Yao got angry with me and burned them all. I don't quite recall what we argued about, but it seemed to have something to do with where the books came from. Thinking of those books turned to ashes, I only felt a deep ache in my heart. Gradually, I was able to diagnose patients. By the time the new year approached, I could already consult. My 3rd senior fellow disciple was very proud of my rapid progress and boasted to everyone about my talent. Whenever I added, "Thanks to my senior disciple's guidance," he would smile so wide that only his gums showed. Soon, the New Year's Eve palace banquet would take place. "Your Majesty, you haven't seen her in years. You don't even know what she looks like now." At the dinner table, Duke Xiao suddenly said, "You will soon have your coming-of-age ceremony. The Empress is very concerned about your marriage." The implication was that some royal relatives were interested in playing matchmaker. I choked on my food, but Madame Xiao complained. First the Marquis of Xuanyang's wife, now the Empress. Why is everyone after my sire? I couldn't help but smile. Since becoming Xiaoningzi, I had known this day would come. I no longer had any illusions or expectations about marriage. But if Duke Xiao and his wife truly wanted me to marry someone, I would obey. I had borrowed this body, taken her parents and status. Filial piety and obedience were the least I could do. One snowy day, my senior fellow disciples were busy in the back, while I sat up front seeing patients. My skills weren't yet up to their level, but with the new year approaching, there were fewer patients, and my third senior disciple was there to supervise, so it was fine for me to consult. Patients came in twos and threes, mostly with long-standing chronic issues. They picked up a few herbs and left. When there were no patients, I turned to my medical books. I wondered if the antidote for that unknown poison had been discovered yet. I turned to my third senior fellow disciple, who was grinding herbs nearby. "Little junior sister, are you talking about regret?" After I described the poison's symptoms, he gave the answer immediately. It was given that name by our master. He took a book from the shelf and opened it to a page. The poison was recorded in the medical texts the year before last. The book only had a few lines on it. What about the symptoms? The antidote formula. I've also heard of the blood transfusion method. Why didn't Master include that? He's usually so thorough, even recording dozens of treatments for a minor cut. At this, my third senior fellow disciple's expression crumpled. He lowered his voice. "Shoo, don't let Master hear you say that. If he gets angry, you, a thin-skinned young lady, won't be able to handle it." I grew more puzzled. "Master believes this method of transferring poison is inhumane," he explained. "It's simply exchanging one life for another. If a person is poisoned, and their family is willing to sacrifice themselves to save them, that's a matter of mutual consent. But have you considered what would happen if a high-ranking official were poisoned, and a poor, weak person were forced to sacrifice themselves? This world would become a hellish place. People are divided into ranks, but patients are not." I didn't know when the snow had stopped. My senior fellow disciple's words still lingered in my mind. Suddenly, the sound of gongs came from outside, interrupting my thoughts. What was happening? All the physicians busy in the back rushed out. The sound of the gongs approached and stopped at the door. A child, about 11 or 12 years old, pushed the door open. His face was flushed red from the cold, but it was full of joy. "General Xia has achieved a great victory. The Shang Kingdom has surrendered." The great continent and the Shang Kingdom had been at war for a full 7 years, during which the people of both nations had suffered immensely. Now, defeated, the Shang Kingdom had ceded territory, sued for peace, and offered treasures. The emperor was overjoyed, decreeing a citywide celebration with free food and drink, the costs to be covered by the imperial treasury. Thus, the already lively New Year's Lantern Festival became unprecedentedly grand. Having no interest in such festivities, I offered to stay behind to watch the medical hall. Jishitang was far from the city center, so it was relatively quiet. In 3 more days, it would be New Year's Eve. Starting tomorrow, all shops would be closed for the holiday, including the medical hall. If someone fell critically ill on New Year's Eve, they would have to go to my master's home to request medical attention. I lit a lamp and placed it on the counter to read by. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in, extinguishing the flame, and the hall instantly darkened. With a loud bang, the door of the medical hall was flung wide open, and snow and wind rushed in. A hunched figure appeared at the door. He limped, dragging his leg with difficulty. I peered closer. A trail of blood marked his path. "Please wait a moment. I'll light a lamp." I picked up a flint. Unexpectedly, the man lunged at me like a whirlwind. A sharp pain stabbed my neck. I dared not move. He pressed a dagger against my throat, his voice vicious. "No light. Bandage my wound." Of all the times for something like this, it had to happen when no one else was around. I can bandage your wound, but if you don't let me light a lamp, aren't you afraid I'll give you the wrong medicine? I tried to keep my voice calm. The man reeked of blood. He was clearly wounded in more than just his leg. Hurry, he said, his voice heavy and trembling. I quickly lit the lamp. Only then did I see that he was dressed in black and wore a black cloth over his face. A terrible memory resurfaced. I began preparing medicine and fetching gauze. The man's arm trembled from blood loss, but he still held the dagger firmly against me. The wound was stuck to his clothing. Pulling it apart directly would make it worse. I asked him, "Do you want to cut it open yourself? Or should I use scissors?" At this, the man's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and he pressed the dagger harder against my neck. "If you kill me now, you'll die too," I said. He stared at me with wide eyes, his gaze locked with mine. Finally, he quickly slit his pant leg and, as fast as lightning, pressed the dagger back to my throat. "Don't try anything." His accent was unusual. The face of a long-ago acquaintance flashed in my mind. Could he be a foreign assassin? The thought made me want to end this with him, but now I cherished my life. I only hoped my senior fellow disciples wouldn't return now, or we would all die. The wound on his leg was from a sword. The wound's surface had necrotized in the freezing cold and wouldn't heal easily. Even applying medicine and bandaging it would be futile. The only way to stop the bleeding was to cut away the dead flesh. I explained the procedure to him. He didn't react with the rage I'd expected. He probably already knew the state of his wound. I heated a knife over the fire, my mind torn between morality and medical ethics. I was certain that once his bleeding was stopped, he would kill me immediately. My master had said that in the eyes of a physician, all patients are equal, even if they've done terrible things. They are just patients in need of treatment. But master, you didn't tell me what to do if the patient wants to kill me. After cutting away the last piece of necrotic flesh, I applied the medicine and bandaged the wound with gauze. He bit down on a handkerchief and didn't make a sound. "You have other wounds. Do you need them treated as well?" The man was more alert than before. He looked up at me, his eyes full of murderous intent. He had seen everything I did, what medicine I mixed, how I applied it, how I bandaged it. Now that he knew, he didn't really need me anymore. He stepped closer. I thought that if I could just delay him for a little while, that would be my advantage. He had been shot with several arrows and couldn't have gotten far. Suddenly, a gruff male voice came from outside. Instinctively, the foreigner blew out my candle, dragged me under the counter, and clamped his hand over my mouth. "Don't make a sound, or I'll kill you," he threatened. By the moonlight, I saw two tall figures lingering at the door. One of them said, "There's blood." The medical hall door was pushed open again. This was my lifeline, but I couldn't call for help. The foreigner was even more nervous than I was. I felt the skin on my neck get nicked by the dagger. He was doing it on purpose. If I made even the slightest noise, he would slit my throat in an instant. Heavy footsteps entered. I could see a faint light from the shadow cast on the medicine cabinet beside me. I saw that the man was holding a torch. The person behind me was breathing evenly but rapidly, still refusing to relax his grip. The footsteps drew closer. I kicked away a roll of gauze, hoping that if it rolled toward the two men, they might notice. In the blink of an eye, the foreigner saw the gauze spreading and readied himself to plunge the dagger into my throat. "Help!" The dagger clattered to the floor. I scrambled out from under the counter and fell to the ground. One of the men had knocked the dagger from the foreigner's hand in the split second he hesitated. Otherwise, I would have been more than just scratched. The other man used his torch to light the lamp, brightening the room. "He's dead." The foreigner lay motionless on the floor. "How is that possible? I didn't hurt him." The man in purple who had just disarmed him quickly crouched down to check. It was me. While treating his wound, I put a sleeping powder on the handkerchief he was biting. I explained, still shaken. "He's just asleep. He'll wake up in less than half an hour." "You're pretty clever, little brother." Perhaps it was because I had my hair up and the light was dim, but the young man in green mistaken my gender. This man was a spy from the Shang Kingdom, hiding in the capital for a long time. When he learned of Shang's defeat, he flew into a rage and wanted to kill a few continent citizens in revenge. "We've been chasing him all the way." The man in purple quickly bound him and turned to explain. With the new year approaching, this was an unexpected incident, and it hadn't caused a stir yet. He asked me to keep it confidential. In the dim firelight, His face was sharply defined. This face slowly overlapped with the youthful, immature one in my memory. I stood stunned, and after a long hesitation, said uncertainly, Xiejian, the year I died. Xiejian was 18. Besides the popular Mo Yao, Yunjing also had a man called the Devil's Despair, Xiejian, Xiesunan. Everyone knew that the youngest son of Prince Anjing was a carefree, idle good-for-nothing. He spent his days not training but raising birds, chasing dogs, frequenting gambling dens, and getting into fights. Prince Anjing had been impeached many times because of him, whether confined to his quarters or beaten by his father. Xiejian remained stubbornly himself. After a while, Prince Anjing gave up on him. When I was still just a spirit and not yet Xiaoningzi, I had crossed paths with him a few times, though we never spoke. I was afraid of him. After my marriage, Mo Yao even told me to stay away from him. So it was true that Xiejian was not a promising figure. So when everyone talked about the valiant General Xie on the battlefield, I thought they meant his elder brother, Xiejin. Later, Duke Xiao told me that Xiejin had been wounded in the leg years ago and had since transferred to a civilian post. Only then did I learn that Xiejian had joined the Chongjin army under Prince Anjing's command 4 years ago. The Chongjin army was supposed to return triumphantly to the capital on New Year's Eve, to be welcomed by the cheering crowds. But here Xiejian was in Yunjing, having probably returned early upon receiving word of the spy. Seeing that I agreed to keep quiet, Xiejian thanked me properly and, before leaving, threw me a small bag of money as payment for treating his injuries. On New Year's Eve, the medical hall was closed. I took Wu Hua to the streets to welcome the army. The people lined the streets to the city gate, a vast, teeming crowd. As the army marched closer, the cheers grew louder, and everyone shouted Xiejian's name. Over the years, he had been victorious in every battle and had become a hero in the people's hearts. The tall, straight figure came into view. Xiejian rode on horseback, clad in white robes and silver armor, his posture straight as a pine, his aura as majestic as the sun. He rode at the head of the army, his expression unchanged. The person I remembered as the brat who used to boast, "Your granddaddy is awesome." After winning a cricket fight seemed like a past life. As evening approached, we took our carriage to the palace. Madame Xiao fiddled with the tassels on my hairpin and said, "If the Empress truly intends to arrange a match for you, don't refuse her outright. Agree for now." I had heard that the Empress was sensitive and unpredictable. I hadn't thought much of it before, but now that Madame Xiao was so cautious, I felt a little nervous. The Ministry of Rites, well versed in the Emperor's heart, had arranged an exceptionally grand banquet. After I sat down, I instinctively glanced at the familiar spot across the room. Not far away, the Marquis of Xuanyang's family sat together. Mo Yao held his wine cup, his expression unreadable. The empty seat beside him made him look somewhat lonely. I looked away. The banquet began, and everyone raised their cups. During the feast, the emperor lavished praise on Xiejian, seemingly in high spirits. Not only did he offer additional rewards, but he also wanted to promote him. But Xiejian was already of noble birth. There wasn't much higher he could go. Xiejian declined everything with the simple excuse of, "It is my duty." Come to think of it, has General Xie still not married? The Empress asked. Xiejian's eyes were deep, and he slowly said 2 words, "No hurry." It was obvious to everyone that he had no intention of marrying. Yet the Empress, who was said to be sensitive, seemed not to notice. "You are already past 20. How can you not be in a hurry? Don't make your elders worry. The daughter of Minister Qi is still unmarried. She would be a suitable match. If I may be so bold, I already have someone in my heart. I'm afraid I will have to disappoint your majesty." Xiejian bowed, his voice resolute. Prince Anjing, sitting nearby, looked displeased. "How strange. I've never heard anyone mention this. Which family's daughter is she? His Majesty and I could help arrange it." Xiejian's expression was grave, but he couldn't answer. Then came the sound of a sharp crack. Mo Yao had slammed his delicate wine cup down on the table. His face was flushed. He was clearly drunk. He bowed first to the emperor, then turned to Xiejian. "General Xie, since His Majesty and Her Majesty have asked, why are you so reluctant to speak?" Xiejian's eyes narrowed dangerously, and he said coldly, "Young Marquis Mo, you're drunk. Sunan, if you won't say, How can we find you a match? The emperor laughed, adding his voice. I really didn't understand the situation. Had Mo Yao and Xie Jian become enemies over the past 3 years? Xie Jian remained silent, and the atmosphere in the hall grew strange. Since the general won't say, then I will. Mo Yao glanced at him sideways, his tone clear and cutting. The one in General Xie's heart is my late wife, Su Yining. I didn't know what sin I had committed to be dragged out and humiliated even after death. The hall fell so silent that even breathing seemed loud. Even Duke Xiao, who had been drinking heavily, seemed to sober up considerably. She has been dead for many years. Why do you still bring up such a joke? Xie Jian's eyes narrowed again, his gaze dangerous. Whether it's a joke, you know very well. General. Mo Yao seemed determined to argue. Finally, the emperor put an end to the farce. Sunan, whether true or not, you have reached the age for marriage. He turned to Prince Anjing. Brother, if we leave this to the empress, what do you think? Prince Anjing shot a warning glance at Xie Jian, then smiled and said, then I will be at ease. Xie Jian's expression was unreadable, but the matter was dropped amidst the sounds of the orchestra. I didn't understand why Mo Yao would force the issue in such a setting. Setting aside the truth of the matter, even if Xie Jian had once had feelings for me, years had passed. The person in his heart might not be me anymore. Besides, Mo Yao had never cared about things concerning me. The only explanation for his behavior was that he had a grudge against Xie Jian and wanted to humiliate him publicly. I thought the matter would end with the banquet, but somehow, word spread. Rumors flew through the capital that I had had an affair with Xie Jian while still alive. Storytellers in tea houses concocted tales of my post-marital infidelity. My reputation had been tarnished in life, and now it was even worse in death. Everyone felt sorry for Mo Yao. My third senior disciple even asked me, little junior sister, have you heard the storyteller's tale of the devoted lover and the unfaithful wife? No, I said. Not long after, people from the Marquis of Xuanyang's household began frequenting the clinic to buy topical medicines for wounds. My senior disciple said that every winter around this time, they came to buy medicine, but this year they were buying an unusual amount. Annoyed by the gossip, I thought uncharitably that I hoped the medicine would all be used on Mo Yao himself. By the 5th day of the new year, I had finally managed to put these matters behind me. Then I was summoned to the palace by the empress. I was prepared for a conversation about marriage, but instead she asked, Ningxi, would you be willing to help me facilitate a happy union? I was confused. The empress dismissed her attendants and sat me down. At the New Year's Eve banquet, His Majesty entrusted me with arranging General Xie's marriage. I've already found a suitable young lady for him, Minister Qi's daughter, Qi Wan. She is not only beautiful and virtuous, but she has also secretly admired him for a long time. Isn't it a perfect match? But since you've already decided, why not simply issue an imperial edict? It seemed they were determined to match these two. I didn't understand what help I could give. An edict would solve everything. The empress sighed. General Xie is a hero who has defended our great continent on countless battlefields. His Majesty and I wish to help resolve his worries. But as you saw, he made every excuse to avoid it. I thought that if he got to know Miss Qi better, he might change his mind. Now I understood. No wonder Madame Xiao said the Empress was sensitive. She wanted him to accept her matchmaking willingly. I smiled and asked, but what can Ningxi do? I don't even know the general. I can't just go and sing Miss Qi's praises to him. The Empress sighed again. That's not it. Mo Yao's words, true or false, are not without substance. 3 years ago, in the dead of winter, Xie Jian returned from a brutal battle in the northern frontier, gravely wounded. He was on the brink of death and didn't wake from his coma for an entire night. But when he did wake, this man who had never believed in gods or Buddhas went mad, insisting on going to Fuyu Temple on Tianhan Mountain to pray. That day, heavy snow fell. He was still recovering from his wounds, yet he crawled up the mountain, kowtowing every third step, nearly losing his life. Everyone thought he was praying for the souls of the soldiers who had fallen in the northern campaign. But now, it seems that might not have been the case. After that, he even fought openly with Mo Yao in the street, and given Mo Yao's reaction that day, it's highly likely. My heart sank. Ningxi, as long as he still has this demon in his heart, he won't be happy in any marriage. That's why I wanted to speak with you. After a moment of silence, I said, "Please be clear. Your Majesty, you have come back from the dead. He will surely believe what you say." The Empress took my hand, her smile gentle. "I want you to tell him that Su Yining has already entered the cycle of reincarnation. He must let go of the past." Although it concerned the past, I didn't remember ever having any interaction with Xie Jian. The stories circulating in the capital were full of conflicting accounts. Even if one of them had a grain of truth, I could at least form some idea of what had happened. Although I didn't approve of the Emperor and Empress's matchmaking methods, I did want him to let go of the past. He was young and in his prime. Why be trapped by the ghost of the dead woman? When she brought him to me, I was waiting in a pavilion in the rear courtyard. Xie Jian seemed reluctant, but the Empress's order could not be refused. He sat down opposite me. "General Xie, I believe after hearing Miss Zhao's words, your thoughts may change." The Empress gave me a meaningful look before leaving. I wasn't sure I could persuade him. Xie Jian's face was cold, and he said nothing. Compared to the fair-skinned young master of my memory, the Xie Jian of today looked much more mature. We sat in silence, the air thick with awkwardness. "Did you really come back from the dead?" After a long time, Xie Jian suddenly spoke. "What do you mean, General? I've read that some people can experience false death. Their pulse stops, but they revive soon after." I had also read about false death in my medical texts. I hadn't expected Xie Jian to know about it, but I didn't think I had experienced that. I couldn't explain that I had been a ghost possessing another's body. So I said, "Just before I lost consciousness completely, I truly felt my soul leave my body." Xie Jian was taken aback. He finally looked up at me. "Did it hurt? Before you died?" he asked. "Not much. It had hurt. But I guessed he only wanted to know if Su Yining had died peacefully. So I lied." But he laughed strangely. "Miss Xiao, I too have been on the brink of death. It's definitely not much. If you're trying to use this to convince me to move on, you needn't bother." He turned his dark eyes away. So it had been a test. So, is the person in the general's heart truly Miss Su? Xie Jian didn't answer, but his expression told me it was true. Unbelievable. The dead have passed. The living must carry on. If Miss Su knew, she would surely not want you to be trapped by the past, unable to move forward. She would want someone to remember her. I'm grateful for that. She doesn't need to be troubled by someone like me. How do you know what she thinks? Xie Jian looked down, murmuring, whether to me or to himself, "She must hate me." "Hate you for what? I ruined her reputation. After she had already been dead for many years." "You mean the rumors in the capital? How could that be your fault?" "Isn't it the fault of the man who was blind to her worth?" I blurted out. Xie Jian grew agitated. "Don't insult her." I was both frustrated and amused. I spoke out of turn. "But this has nothing to do with you. It was that young Marquis Mo who said it himself. He didn't care about his late wife's reputation. Why are you shouldering all the blame?" Xie Jian was silent, but his brow was heavy with pain. Once a person is determined to believe something, there's no talking them out of it. Perhaps there was a part of Xie Jian's past I didn't know, but it wasn't my place to ask. "General Xie, have you heard of the Wangchuan River?" I asked. "Legend says that the Wangchuan River lies between the road to the underworld and the realm of the dead. The souls of the dead must cross it by boat to reach the other shore and enter the cycle of reincarnation." Xie Jian looked at me blankly, not understanding why I was suddenly talking about this. "On the Wangchuan River, there is a bridge called the Naiha Bridge. On that bridge is an old woman named Meng Pa, who brews a soup that makes the dead forget their past lives. Before entering the afterlife, the dead must drink the soup to cross the bridge." "Do you know why?" "General, why?" "Because the boat cannot carry the weight," I explained, smiling. "Love, hate, obsession, they are all heavy burdens. The Wangchuan River is both shallow and deep. If the dead do not let go of their ties to the mortal world, it's like carrying a heavy stone, they will sink before reaching the other shore." Xie Jian was silent for a moment, then asked, "What are you trying to say?" I stopped smiling and said, "One word at a time. What if the same is true for the living?" That day, I tried to console Xie Jian in the shunning palace. When I left, he looked dazed and lost. Xie Jian now believed in gods and Buddhas. He must have taken my words to heart. If the dead cannot reincarnate because the living hold on to them, that was a cruel thing to say. But I didn't want him to waste his life suffering for a dead woman. Su Yining was dead. That was the truth. I continued my medical studies with my master and senior fellow disciples. After the 15th day of the new year, the number of patients at the clinic increased, mostly suffering from febrile illnesses. Everyone was busy, with several physicians seeing patients from morning till night. I was also busy, diagnosing and prescribing for those who came. After days of hard work, I felt completely drained, skin flaking off like a snake's, and I couldn't sleep well at night. The next day, I woke early and arrived at the clinic even earlier than usual. There was no one on the street yet, but from a distance, I saw a person lying at the entrance of the clinic. I rushed over to help and found it was a young woman. She was unconscious. When I touched her, she let out a pained moan. "Please, don't." Her delicate brows were tightly furrowed, her weak voice even fainter behind her veil. I had to struggle to help her inside. Her pulse was weak, her limbs cold, and she had a high fever. I didn't know how long she had been lying there in the freezing cold. Miss. I called several times. She didn't respond, just lay there, her brow furrowed in pain. I pulled back her sleeve to take her pulse. The sight made my heart skip a beat. There were many shocking scars on her wrist. Remembering her moan, I pulled up her other sleeve. Bruises, scars, unhealed wounds, all looked grim on her pale, thin wrist. These wounds were the cause of her fever. I got up to prepare medicine, but as soon as I moved, she grabbed my sleeve. Forgive me, she said, her voice choked with tears. I turned to look at her. Her eyes were open. "Miss, please rest. I'll get your medicine," I said gently, trying to soothe her, but the woman held onto my sleeve, unwilling to let go. Her tears soaked her veil, and her features, faintly visible beneath it, began to look very familiar. She looked at me, her eyes glistening. "Forgive me. I will atone. Please, forgive me, Miss Su." Those 3 words startled me. When I recovered, she had let go and lost consciousness again. She must have been delirious with fever and mistaken me for someone else. I reached up and lifted her veil. As the fabric fell away, a familiar face emerged. It was Su Yongyue. In the 4th year of my marriage, I met Mo Yao's so-called first love. She hid behind him, timid and uneasy. Mo Yao said that Su Yongyue didn't have long to live, and her final wish was to spend that time with him. At that time, my uncle had just fallen from power, and his entire family had been banished. My heart was breaking, and my health was failing, so I looked at Mo Yao with a vicious glare. "I'm not dead yet, and you're already bringing your beloved into the house. I suppose she'll have to be a concubine." Mo Yao's face darkened, and he cut me off coldly. "Su Yining, can't you speak properly? Speak properly." "How should I speak? I haven't recovered from losing my child last year, and now I've lost my only remaining family, and now I have to watch my husband bring another woman home. Do you expect me to smile and accept it? Miss Su, I haven't properly thanked you for saving Brother Io's life." Su Yongyue bowed her head gracefully. What right did she have to thank me? I looked at her simple, elegant attire, which only accentuated her ethereal beauty. I remembered that Mo Yao never allowed me to wear light colors. I struggled to get out of bed and approach her. Mo Yao instinctively shielded her with his arm. I laughed coldly, raised my hand, and slapped her. "Call me madam." The Su Yongyue then had been lively and spirited. It was hard to connect her with the sickly woman before me now. How had she suffered so many injuries? Some were so deep the bone was visible. I gave her medicine to reduce the fever and treated her wounds. My 3rd senior disciple arrived and was shocked when he saw Su Yongyue. "Isn't this the daughter of the Su family's cloth merchant?" "It should be." "Senior disciple, how do you know her?" He came closer, looking at her wounds, his frown deepening. "She's been missing for 3 years. How has she suddenly appeared in Yunjing?" My 3rd senior disciple examined her and, even though he was used to seeing wounds, gasped when he saw the injuries on her arms. 3 years ago, old man Su came to the capital and put up notices everywhere looking for his daughter. After searching for a year and finding nothing, everyone assumed she had been killed. So he left Yunjing again. My senior disciple looked at the unconscious Su Yongyue. I was out gathering herbs at the time and kept an eye out. I thought maybe I could find her, but I never expected her to show up like this today. I had heard that the Su family's cloth business was originally based in Yunjing. Later, When Mo Yao and Su Yongwe fell in love, old Madame Mo looked down on her merchant background, and when she couldn't persuade Mo Yao to give her up, she used other means to drive the Su family out of Yunjing. But how did she end up missing? After I died, Mo Yao never married Su Yongwe. I thought she had already left the capital and gone home. Su Yongwe slept restlessly, murmuring in her sleep. Why had she apologized to me? Before I could think about it further, I heard a commotion outside. Several fierce-looking, burly men barged in. I had a feeling they had come for Su Yongwe. My third senior disciple was a step behind me, so I quickly signaled to him to stay back. Call your boss out, snarled the leader, a man with a tattoo on his face. He clearly had no respect for me. I am the doctor here. You can talk to me. I was annoyed. The tattooed man looked me up and down and laughed contemptuously. What kind of doctor is a woman like you? I realized then that in my rush to tend to Su Yongwe, I had forgotten to change into plain clothes. I said I am. This is a medical clinic. If you aren't here to see a doctor, please leave. I called for a servant to show them out. The tattooed man exchanged glances with his companions. A female slave ran away from our master's manor. She stole a lot of things. We heard she might have come to Jishitang. We've come to search the place. So you're all officers? I asked carefully. May I see your credentials? Of course not. Why would a simple slave be worth sending officers after? The tattooed man was clearly impatient. Then I cannot allow you to search. Do you know who we are? The tattooed man puffed out his chest, pulling a wooden token from his pocket. It was carved with a large character for M.O. We're from the Marquis Manor. You think you can keep us out of this shabby clinic? I now truly understood what it meant to bully the weak with the backing of the powerful. But it was the Marquis of Xuanyang's manor. I hesitated. Perhaps Su Yongwe had been rescued by Mo Yao and taken there after her injuries. But given their aggressive manner and the way they addressed her, it seemed unlikely. If the manor was safe, why would she have run away? Or had she been imprisoned by Mo Yao for the past 3 years, subjected to abuse? My thoughts churned, but I ultimately decided to trust my instincts. There's nothing in the laws of the great continent that says an order from a marquis manor is the same as an order from the government. This is Yunjing, at the feet of the emperor. Do you dare break in here by force? I stared at him coldly, neither servile nor overbearing. Usually, the people of the various noble houses in Yunjing wouldn't dare cause trouble in the capital, for fear of being reported to the emperor. But these men were clearly reckless, causing a disturbance even at a well-known clinic like Jishitang. So they must be Mo Yao's men. Although Mo Yao was a civilian official, he was very combative, perhaps due to his time in the military. He often recruited powerful fighters, setting them against each other for his amusement, enjoying their desperate struggles. There is a saying, remote, impoverished places breed unruly people. When I was still alive, the manor had hired many violent men from out of town. They were brutal and loved to fight, never respecting the rules of their own hometowns, let alone those of other places. But this was Yunjing, with eyes and ears everywhere. If you barge in here today under the authority of the Marquis of Xuanyang, you can be sure that tomorrow the Marquis will be impeached for abuse of power. 1 charge, 1 punishment, 2 charges, 2 punishments. I intimidated them with feigned profundity. The laws of the continent prohibited private punishment, but slaves who had signed a contract of indenture were not protected. If you could guarantee that your master wouldn't take his anger out on you afterward, I didn't mind you betting your lives on it. This gave them pause. I was sure they had seen how Mo Yao dealt with servants who made mistakes. In fact, if Mo Yao had bothered to tell them about the rules in the capital, they wouldn't have acted so rashly. But this was Yunjing, where every move was constrained. There could be only one reason he hadn't. He enjoyed their fear, enjoyed watching them suffer the anxiety of their mistakes. Sometimes, I found it funny how well I knew Mo Yao. Throughout our marriage, he had resented me, and I, in turn, had come to resent him. But that didn't stop us from being the people who understood each other best. It was disgusting. The burly men were already thinking of leaving. After all, who would risk their lives on a gamble? I breathed a quiet sigh of relief. What if I promise that no punishment will be given? A familiar voice came from outside the door. The thugs parted to make way, and a tall, elegant figure emerged. I never expected our first real meeting to be like this. I stared coldly at the man before me. He looked back at me with deep, unfriendly eyes. Young Marquis Mo. I feigned hesitation. I was surprised that he had come personally to retrieve her. Then he added, if you tell me where she is, I can be merciful and let you leave this plague-ridden place. If I could leave, I could perhaps find other doctors to help. After all, the Crown Prince hadn't ordered that no one from outside could come in. If the man before me were the Mo Yao I knew, I might have believed him. But this man, just a moment ago, you were talking about protecting the people. Now you want to give up that protection for your own selfish desires. You, young Marquis Mo, are truly a man of your word, Lu Jiujuan said, with no restraint in his words. Mo Yao glanced at him coolly and let out a short huff, then put on a smile. I hope you can all wait for the imperial physicians to come up with a cure. Then he mounted his horse and rode away with a sneer. I didn't know how much of what Mo Yao said was true. The worst-case scenario was that he hadn't actually told anyone. Lu Jiujuan, son of the Grand Tutor, Xiao Ningzi, the only daughter of Duke Xiao, and Xie Jian, son of Prince Anjing, did he really think he could hide all this from everyone with just one sealed letter? Back in the tent, Xie Jian and Lu Jiujuan's faces were grim. Xie Jian tried his best to hide the news of the lockdown from the soldiers, to prevent panic. Lu Jiujuan had just returned from the capital and was now trapped in the camp. He also brought back another very bad piece of news. The Crown Prince seemed to have placed Xie Jin, the heir, under house arrest. Xie Jian and Prince Anjing were not in the capital, but Xie Jin was. Upon receiving news of the outbreak, Xie Jian had asked his brother to report the matter to the court. That was why he had felt comfortable finding a doctor in the city and returning directly to the camp. Now, with the Crown Prince's decision, his refusal to send help, and Mo Yao's words, it was hard not to suspect that he was the one behind the poisoning. But Mo Yao had a grudge against Xie Jian. What reason did the Crown Prince have? As the heir to the throne, why would he want to antagonize two of the most powerful ministers in the court? The Crown Prince has been looking for a way to get rid of us for a long time, Lu Jiujuan said, helping me decoct medicine while explaining. The Changjin army is invincible and beloved by the people. Prince Anjing holds military power, and the emperor trusts him implicitly, giving him free rein. Although many court officials are afraid of this, they only dare to complain in private. The only one brave enough to act is the Crown Prince. I understood. The Crown Prince was afraid that after the emperor died, the throne might not be his. But if he dared to make a move against Xie Jian, wasn't he afraid Prince Anjing would retaliate? Or did he think Prince Anjing was also in the Yunjing camp? In the camp, Xie Jian had sealed off the well in the eastern zone. He wanted to guard it and catch the poisoner in the act. But many people had access to the well. To prevent more cases, he simply sealed it. As for the poisoner, he was now trapped in the quarantine zone. Continued poisoning would do him no good either. Xie Jian assigned guards to key areas like the kitchen and the river to the west, places where many people gathered. No one dared bet on whether the poisoner would strike again. Miss Xiao, you're a young lady from a noble family. How did you become a doctor? The night Lu Jiujuan arrived, Xie Jian told him my true identity. After learning that I was Duke Xiao's daughter, he became even more curious, asking me all sorts of questions. He kept his hands busy while talking, so I humored him occasionally. And you, young Master Lu, why aren't you a carefree young master anymore? How did you become an army advisor? I really did seem to have a habit of answering questions with questions, all because of Xie Sunan. He insisted on joining the army, and I was afraid he'd be lonely, so I came to keep him company. I never thought I'd actually make it to advisor position. Lu Jiujuan was quite the chatterbox. He mentioned you were a woman, and it shocked me. You're really brave, coming to a place full of men in the middle of the night. Did you two meet in the palace before? I heard the Empress asked you to try to persuade him. By the way, did you really come back from the dead? What did it feel like? I really admired how he could chatter on about irrelevant things when our lives were at risk. Was he too relaxed or just oblivious? I kind of regret it now, especially with all your yapping. Regret it? Why? Lu Jiujuan looked confused but didn't press. He then asked, that Mo Yao seems to know you, but he only called you a doctor from Jishitang. Have you offended him? I'm already short on sleep and irritable. I poured the medicine into bowls and distributed them. When I looked up, Lu Jiujuan was still watching me, although his expression was still casual. I could see a hint of probing in his eyes. He was suspicious, maybe not outright distrust, but he was definitely curious. I helped someone who escaped from the Marquis manor. Mo Yao came looking for her, and I didn't hand her over. That's why he remembers it. Lu Jiujuan nodded thoughtfully, murmuring to himself. What kind of person would make him come personally and still remember it after so long? Was it a woman? I paused. Lu Jiujuan was still smiling. Then I couldn't hear him anymore, because Xie Jian had sent him to tend to the patients. This was my 4th night at the camp. My nerves were so taut I didn't dare sleep, constantly reading and preparing medicines. Yet still no solution. On the 6th day, I found a strange black bug in the blood coughed up by one of the patients. Is this a viper bug? Xie Jian's expression changed drastically. This is a poisonous bug found in the northern frontier. It lives in the organs of vipers, absorbing their nutrients and slowly devouring their internal organs until the snake dies. How could it be here on the continent? Lu Jiujuan looked at the wriggling bug, ready to vomit. A viper bug. It sounded familiar. Regret. I clearly remembered the ingredients of the poison listed in my master's medical text. One of them was the viper bug. The poison maker would grind up mature viper bugs into a paste and mix it with other medicinal ingredients. Since the bug itself was highly toxic, along with the other poisons, the antidote had been difficult to create. Any creature bitten by a viper bug would suffer high fever and abdominal pain, eventually dying from the corrosion and failure of its internal organs. The symptoms matched. Moreover, these bugs were difficult to breed and died soon after leaving the snake's body. This one was quite plump, meaning it had been living inside a human host. This patient's organs had been severely corroded, and he was beyond help. Since the poison contained viper bug, the antidote for regret might also work against this poison. But the antidote for regret was a case of fighting poison with poison, containing several extremely toxic ingredients. Directly using it on this poison would be risky. As if reading my thoughts, Xie Jian voiced his concern. I was surprised he knew about this, but his words were correct. Now, we could only experiment slowly. Did this bug end up in his body by accident, or was it deliberately placed there? Lu Jiujuan asked, looking at the bug with disgust. I don't know. The patient had been brought from the eastern zone just 2 days ago, yet the bug had already hollowed out his insides in that short time. It was pitiful, remembering his agonized expression before death. My heart ached. But Xie Jian said the poison was in the well water. Could the killer have thrown the bug into the well? And this man somehow swallowed it. The bug itself isn't poisonous enough to harm so many people just by being in the water. I was also curious about the method. Speaking of which, the general's face has been dark all morning. I know he's worried and exhausted, but with so few people to help, if he collapses, it would be a disaster. Why don't you, Advisor Lu, try to convince him to rest? His face looks worse than if he'd seen a ghost. Lu Jiujuan put down his jar of medicine and sighed helplessly. That's his heart that's sick. Rest won't help. I remained silent. Can Jishitang cure a broken heart? Lu Jiujuan asked. If you mean angina, my 3rd senior disciple is very good at that. If only it were that simple. Lu Jiujuan sighed again. A friend of Xie Sinan once died from regret. This must be bringing back memories. The dead are gone. Why dwell on sorrow? I've told him that too, but our General Xia is so devoted. It's been 3 years, but he's still trapped in regret. The truth is, the young lady's death had nothing to do with him, but ever since he returned from the palace a while ago, he's been doing a bit better. What did you say to him? I just comforted him. I had actually given him a harsh dose of reality. What words were so effective? You said Xie Sunan felt regret. What exactly did he regret? I had barely any connection with him then. There was no reason for him to feel such deep remorse. Since you know so much, I'll tell you. If you can comfort him further and help him truly let go, even better. Lu Jiujuan leaned close and whispered. He was killed by the very antidote he himself had found. I was stunned. Lu Jiujuan said. Su Yining married into the Marquis' household in the 3rd year. Xie Jian had already joined the army, rising from a lowly soldier to commander before being sent to the northern frontier. Su Yining was poisoned when a foreign spy infiltrated the grounds during an autumn outing. The spy targeted Mo Yao, and the arrow that struck him was tipped with poison. In the chaos, Su Yining managed to escape with Mo Yao, somehow saving him but suffering herself. Upon hearing this, Xie Jian searched relentlessly for an antidote. When he learned that the poison came from the northern frontier, he resolved to join the army there. But unexpectedly, not long after delivering the antidote to Mo Yao, Su Yining died. It was said the antidote was to blame. I heard a completely different story from Lu Jiujuan. Xie Jian had actually obtained the antidote. I remembered the triumphant look on Mo Yao's face as he said, "There's a cure." He never told me how the cure was obtained or where the antidote came from, so I naturally assumed he had found it himself. And even if the antidote itself was the problem, it was the existence of the antidote, not the antidote itself. My heart felt pricked by countless needles. Seeing me silent, Lu Jiujuan sighed again. Later, Mo Yao searched the entire city carrying his wife's body. You heard about that, right? When Xie Jian learned of it, he felt even more guilty. Mo Yao blamed him and insulted him, but Xie Jian never fought back. If he were still the hothead he used to be, he would have punched him long ago. Miss Su's death had nothing to do with General Xie, I said. Of course it didn't. I told him that, but he won't believe it. He's been fighting like a maniac ever since. I've wondered if he wants to die just to join her. Lu Jiujuan's words, though casually spoken, struck my heart like hammer blows. So he went to Fuyu Temple for her too. After giving Mo Yao the antidote, he returned to camp. In a fierce battle, not a single man in the Chongjin army died, though all were wounded. He was the most gravely injured. The doctors said that if the sword had been an inch closer to his heart, he would have died. He survived. But when he returned to the capital, he heard that the Marquis of Xuanyang's wife was dead. He went mad. He prayed to the gods and Buddhas, hoping she would return from the dead. Then he heard that Fuyu Temple was very efficacious, so he climbed the mountain, kowtowing every third step, hoping she would be reborn into a good family and live happily ever after. That's true madness. The medicine pot began to boil. I took the decoction and went to give it to the soldiers in the various tents. It wasn't a cure, only a temporary suppressant. On the way, I ran into Xie Jian. He looked worried and dejected. Dr. Xiao, how is the new medicine coming along? He asked. It's been formulated, but the dosage needs to be adjusted based on how the body reacts. However, this may require human testing. The test subjects must be patients. That means we have to ask those already suffering to take the risk of the trial. If we're lucky, a few tries will succeed. If not, it could take hundreds or thousands of attempts. It's truly cruel. Dr. Xiao, I understand your concerns. How about I contract the poison myself, and then you can test the medicine on me? General Xie, I cut him off sharply. You're exhausted. Go rest. You're starting to talk nonsense. Patients are not divided by rank. If you yourself were infected and voluntarily offered to be tested, I wouldn't refuse. But to have a healthy person become infected for this purpose, even if voluntary, I cannot agree. Dr. Xiao hasn't had a good rest in days either. I'm young. I can handle it better than you. Xie Jian took the medicine pot from me. I'll give the medicine to the soldiers. You go rest. For now, you're the only doctor. If you fall, the Chongjin army is truly doomed. Combined with what Lu Jiujuan had said, I realized Xie Jian's guilt might be driving him to self-destructive tendencies. I thought that maybe I should just tell him the truth, rather than let him continue to suffer in ignorance. Xie Jian, actually, Dr. Xiao. A weak voice came from behind. Song Yen, looking feeble, waved me over. He shuffled toward me, his eyes determined. Dr. Xiao, let me be the test subject. Song Yen was originally from the Imperial Medical Bureau. After 3 years there, he was rotated to the camp as a military doctor. The Chongjin army had 10 military doctors, and Song Yen was their leader. Since the outbreak, they had been run ragged, and despite precautions, many had been infected. They had no choice but to send a message to the deputy commander, who was far away at Tianhan Mountain. Back in the pharmacy, I brewed the medicine, my heart pounding with anxiety. If it worked on the first try, I could adjust the dosage based on Song Yan's reaction, and perhaps the epidemic could be controlled quickly. But if it didn't, I tried not to think about it. Dr. Xiao, you don't need to feel burdened. Even in treatment, there are risks. This step is inevitable. Song Yan comforted me instead. I heard from the general that you're a disciple of Chen Baiguang. To be so calm at such a young age is truly remarkable. I picked up the bowl of medicine. Song Yen was looking out of the tent, at the distant sky, his eyes full of longing but also grief. He too was afraid of the unknown. I handed him the medicine. He didn't take it, just stared at it silently. Dr. Xiao. The patients who were coughing up blood severely a few days ago are doing better today. Should I reduce their dosage? Xie Jian's voice came from outside. Song Yan's calm expression finally flickered. He looked up at me, his gaze deep. I'm sorry, he said. Then he lunged. The freshly brewed medicine and the ceramic bowl shattered on the floor. A sharp pain lanced through my wrist. Song Yan's teeth were sunk deep into my flesh, and he was vomiting blood. It all happened so fast. By the time I reacted, Xie Jian had already subdued him. Song Yan was still vomiting blood. He had been a mild case, but now he was critically ill. Xiao Ningzi, wash the wound now. Xie Jian pulled me to my feet and rushed me to the water basin. I couldn't tell if the blood on my arm was my own or Song Yan's. My hand wouldn't stop trembling. Looking at the stained water, I finally understood how Song Yan had done it. The onset was faster than I expected. 2 hours later, my forehead was burning. Xie Jian panicked and wanted to take me out of the camp, to any clinic. Unlike the soldiers who had drunk poisoned water, my wound had come into direct contact with the blood of Song Yan, who had ingested the bug and then vomited. Lu Jiujuan stopped him. The crown prince has already given his orders. Even if his actions are misguided, openly defying him would be an act of disobedience. I agreed. Leaving the quarantine zone without permission, even with good reason, could be construed as deliberately spreading the disease. Xie Jian's face was dark. His hands clenched. Song Yan died before he could be questioned. His last words were the apology. No one had suspected the killer was in the Western Zone, let alone that it was a physician of the imperial court. I wanted to comfort Xie Jian, but I was too dizzy to speak. After giving instructions, whether from the illness or sheer exhaustion, I fell into a deep sleep. In my dreams, I seemed to return to 3 years before. I dreamed of my hometown in Jiangnan, my long-dead parents, my uncle who treated me like his own daughter, and my siblings in the courtyard. Before I turned 16, my life as Su Yining had been happy enough. The images in my dream flashed like a lantern show. Before I could finish reliving the pleasant memories, I was in the Marquis of Xuanyang's mansion. I watched myself as a spectator, trying to please Mo Yao and his mother. The Mo Yao of those years had less warmth and patience, mostly ignoring my efforts. I saw him throw away all my light-colored clothes, burn the medical texts I treasured, and hold me when I lost a child, comforting me that we would have another. I couldn't empathize with the me in the dream. So devastated. Love and hate are separated by only a thin line. The accumulated resentment finally erupted the day my uncle was banished. I finally remembered that what destroyed my love for Mo Yao wasn't the woman trying to steal my place, Su Yongwei, but the cold refusal of Mo Yao to even open the study door when I knelt there for 3 days, begging just to see my uncle one last time. My insides felt as if they were being torn apart, as if I were back in the days of being tormented by the poison. I struggled to wake up. The cool cloth on my forehead felt good. By the flickering candlelight, I saw Xie Jian's haggard face. General, how did you get here? I tried to sit up, but my limbs were weak, without the strength to even push myself up. How are you feeling? His voice was hoarse. I remembered testing the new formula before falling asleep. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to have worked. I need to adjust it. Xie Jian didn't speak. Since returning to camp, he had barely slept. He looked years older than when he had first arrived. Miss Xiao, I know an apology is useless, but, General, when I agreed to enter the camp, I knew this might happen. I sighed. It was a decision I made after careful consideration. You don't need to feel responsible. Xie Jian said nothing more, just took the cloth from my forehead, rinsed it, and placed it back. I looked up at his face. In my dreams or memories, I had very few impressions of Xie Jian. What is it? He noticed my gaze. Su Yining's death had nothing to do with you. He was taken aback, not expecting me to say that. Miss Xiao, are you trying to comfort me again? He smiled slightly, but it was tinged with bitterness. A while ago, I helped a young woman. She's the one young Marquis Mo loves. Because I had heard about his desperate search for a doctor for his late wife. I asked her some questions. She told me that she, too, had once been poisoned with regret. But she was saved. The only antidote that Mo Yao had found by chance saved her. I told a small lie. I had originally wanted to reveal my true identity to Xie Jian, to free him from his pain. But now, with my life hanging in the balance, if I told him I was Su Yining, he would only blame himself more. Xie Jian was stunned. It took him a long time to recover. He forced a strained smile. How is that possible? It's the truth. I sighed. When this is over, you can ask Mo Yao yourself. Who did he give the antidote to? I thought my words would relieve him. But instead, he seemed lost. The one who killed her, it's still me. It really is me. You. That day, the autumn outing invitation I sent you was from me. My heart stopped. When I first arrived in Yunjing, the only person I knew besides my own family was Mo Yao. When I received an invitation with my name on it, I naturally assumed it was from him. That was also when I mistakenly believed Mo Yao was interested in me, which is why I didn't refuse the Marquis's marriage proposal. If I hadn't invited him, he wouldn't have been in danger, and he wouldn't have been forced to risk his life. Xie Jian's voice was calm, but the pain in his eyes was immense. If you invited him, why didn't you just say so? I couldn't remember Xie Jian being part of that autumn outing at all. I didn't dare speak to him. At this, he seemed a little shy. He didn't know me. Perhaps he knew I existed, but he always seemed afraid of me, so I never had the courage to talk to him. His brow relaxed, and under the candlelight, his expression was soft, as if lost in the memories of those days. I had indeed been afraid of him. When I first came to Yunjing, I was timid and unsure, clumsy at everything. Xie Jian, the man who bantered with everyone on the street, was someone anyone would find intimidating. As far as I know, Miss Su hardly ever left her house. What did you like about her? This was a question I had often wondered. Love at first sight. It's rather cliched. Perhaps noticing my slight smile, he coughed awkwardly. You never met her. She was the kind of woman you'd see once and never forget. She always seemed to be standing quietly, as if nothing interested her. Yet she was curious about everything. Whenever she saw something amusing, her eyes would come alive, making you want to know what had caught her attention. My heart ached, and I felt strangely wronged, like I wanted to cry. I liked her very much. I don't know why, even though we barely interacted. His gaze grew dim, but then she married Mo Yao. I had already guessed she liked him, but I refused to believe it, lying to myself that she just had terrible taste. Don't say that. She thought she had terrible taste too now. Come to think of it, she and you have something in common. Xie Jian laughed genuinely, a dimple appearing beside his mouth. She also loved reading medical texts. I even stole some books from my father's study and sent them anonymously to the Marquis's mansion. Was that you? I couldn't stop myself from exclaiming, then realized my mistake. Fortunately, he was lost in recollection and didn't notice. The autumn outing invitation, the medical texts, the anonymous antidote. How many other things had Xie Jian secretly done? Later, I heard her married life wasn't happy. I often wonder if it was something I did that affected it. What do you mean? When I was young, I stole her love lock from the tree of fate. He smiled sheepishly. So, I couldn't help it, I laughed. Then the laugh triggered a coughing fit. Xie Jian quickly stood up to help me. I'm sorry, I got lost in the past. I'm disturbing your rest. Please stop apologizing. You take on too much guilt. When I finally stopped coughing, I said, General, you should rest too. You don't have much time yourself. If you collapse, there will be no one in charge. He changed the water and placed it by my bed. Thank you for listening to me. There's a guard outside. If you need anything, just call. He left the tent. I blew out the candle and soon fell asleep. I had more chaotic dreams. In one, I stood under the tree of fate, with a purple robe fluttering behind the trunk. Overnight, my condition worsened. I began vomiting blood, suffering from abdominal pain, and after vomiting a large amount of dark blood, I fell into a deep coma. I vaguely felt someone carrying me on their back. Xie Jian wanted to take me out of the camp, but Lu Jiujuan stopped him. I told you, rushing out now will only make them more wary. Do you want to hear rumors that Prince Anjing defied the imperial command? Lu Jiujuan, Is the prince's reputation more important than a human life? She's only 14. I tried to open my eyes, but couldn't. I brought her here, Xie Jian said. Failing to protect her is my fault. I alone will bear whatever consequences. Let me through. I couldn't hear the rest. When I opened my eyes again, I was still in the camp, but now my master was there, with his white hair and beard. He sat by my bedside. Seeing me awake, he smiled kindly. Child, you did very well. You've worked hard. I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I threw myself into his arms and sobbed. He said I had been unconscious for 7 days, and the epidemic in the camp was over, thanks to the formula I had finally produced. He had made minor adjustments to the dosage, and the soldiers had improved significantly within days. As he spoke, I saw an imperial physician tidying his medicine box. Master, how did you get in? Wasn't the road blocked? He sighed and explained that he and the imperial physicians hadn't come together. 7 days ago, he had arrived in Yunjing just before the city gates closed. When he returned to Jishitang that night, he found only the janitorial staff. No doctors. About to go to the branch hall, he ran into a travel-worn Xie Jian. He told him the situation, then led him to the camp. They traveled stealthily, avoiding the main roads, taking many detours before finally reaching the rear of the camp. They had to climb over the wall to get in. Thank goodness he brought me in time. A little later, and you would have died. He sighed. I then saw the numerous silver needles on my arm. Dr. Xiao, you're finally awake. Lu Jiujuan, no longer looking tired, rushed in, his face beaming. He bowed to my master, then turned to me. You don't know. You've been coughing up blood every day. I wondered how such a small body could produce so much. How did the imperial physicians get here? Was the blockade lifted? Lu Jiujuan smiled mysteriously. How do you think I became an army advisor? Did you think I would trap myself here without any way out? When I couldn't figure it out, he explained. After being rejected by the crown prince, he went home to tell his father, the grand tutor. At that time, there was still no news in the capital, and even the grand tutor couldn't broach the subject with the emperor. Moreover, the emperor was ill and hadn't held court for several days. But since the matter had been brought to the crown prince's attention, he would have to act. Whatever he did, the grand tutor could simply keep asking questions. Eventually, the whole court would find out. No one could keep it a secret. Lu Jiujuan gambled on whether the crown prince would sacrifice his own reputation to eliminate Prince Anjing's faction. After a few days, the grand tutor was getting nowhere. The crown prince remained unmoved, and in fact, had never informed the Imperial Medical Bureau at all, until someone else stepped in. Who? I couldn't help asking. Lu Jiujuan smiled slyly. Your father, Duke Xiao. The night I left for the camp, Duke Xiao and his wife, worried that I hadn't returned, sent people to Jishitang. They found only my note explaining where I had gone. His wife was frantic, but afraid that forcing me back would make me think they didn't support my dreams. She waited a few days. Then, Duke Xiao heard that the crown prince had blocked the main road to the camp. Enraged, he barged into the eastern palace and confronted the crown prince. Only then did the crown prince learn that his young aunt, Xiao Ningxi, was also in the camp. Under pressure from Duke Xiao and other ministers, he had no choice but to open the road and send help. I was speechless. Since the matter was resolved, could I go home? I had left in such a hurry and had been so busy since arriving. I had forgotten to tell my family. I would surely be scolded when I returned. My master seemed hesitant, and Lu Jiujuan's smile faded. The atmosphere turned strange. The soldiers in the quarantine zone have recovered, but your poison hasn't been fully cleared yet. I was surprised. Then Lu Jiujuan said, Song Yen didn't just vomit blood into your wound. He also vomited a bug. Song Yen, oh Song Yen, you were truly vicious. And then you said, I'm sorry. My master said I nearly died because the bug almost entered my heart. Once inside, even a god couldn't save me. Hearing that now was terrifying. Then you really have to thank the general for bringing you here. You have more to thank him for than you know. My master removed the silver needles from my wrist one by one. The bug inside you is like a parasite. To completely remove it, we have to force it out. I will make an incision on your wrist and let it out with your blood. But there's one missing ingredient, the gallbladder of a Qing Shuang snake, found only in the frozen north. Xie had left for the north 4 days ago, promising to return with it. The ice and snow are just beginning to thaw. The north is half a year behind us in climate. The snakes are probably still hibernating. It won't be easy to find. Sunan said he will save your life no matter what. He left without a word. My master went to check on other patients after administering the acupuncture. Only Lu Jiujuan and I remained in the tent. He didn't have to go to such lengths. I knew Xie still felt guilty for dragging me into this. But it had been my own choice. Speaking of which, I just learned from Sunan that you're only 14. Lu Jiujuan abruptly changed the subject. You seem so calm, especially being able to organize everything even after falling ill. I thought you were already an adult. It feels like you're more mature than us. I only just realized that. Seriously, sometimes I felt like you were in your 20s. How can you be so young yet so mature? He laughed. Or did you really see the other side when you died and become enlightened? Advisor Lu, has anyone ever told you that you're very noisy? I feel like my ears are going to grow calluses. That's harsh. I'm a bit talkative, but not that noisy. Since you asked, I'll answer. My status isn't as high as Sunan's, but I'm still the son of the Grand Tutor. When I was young, I was a companion to the 6th prince. Perhaps others think I'm noisy but don't say anything. But when I was 15, one person did say it. Guess who? How should I know? Su Yining. A glint of testing. A hint of mischief flickered in Lu Jiujuan's eyes. You know who I mean, don't you? The air was still for a moment. I couldn't tell if he was saying Su Yining had said it, or if he was asking if I knew Su Yining. He smiled. The answer was obvious. This man was too clever. How had I ever mistaken him for a carefree playboy? How did you find out? Stop pretending. You're giving up. He seemed surprised that I admitted it so readily. So it's true. I nodded. So there really is such a thing as possession by a vengeful spirit. He had tested me, but now he was the one shocked. It's not much of a discovery. I just felt you and Su Yining were similar, and you were always so certain when talking about whether her death was related to Sunan. It was a gut feeling. I thought I'd try to trick you into confessing. I never thought it would work. He looked at me excitedly. So, how did you die? From illness. Xie antidote never reached me. Mo Yao gave it to the woman he loved. What? Then why was he carrying your body around? Begging for medicine. Lu Jiujuan was confused. Maybe to put on a show. After all, everyone in the capital says he's so devoted and honorable. I laughed bitterly. Devoted. Honorable. Him. Lu Jiujuan also sneered. Miss Su, let me tell you. Don't believe it. Soon after you died, he took another mistress. One he had chosen to resemble you. I thought Mo Yao was even more disgusting. Miss Su, I have a favor to ask you. Lu Jiujuan's expression turned serious. Tell Sunan the truth. He went to find that antidote for you. I'm not asking you to repay him, but it's not fair that he did something good yet has been deceived, tormented by guilt all these years. Advisor Lu, I don't want him to live in guilt either. On the night I was poisoned, I had told him, indirectly, that I hadn't died because of him. I didn't know if he had believed me. Lu Jiujuan seemed to want to say more, but he just sighed, looked away, and continued to chat idly. That night, my arm was numb, as if ants were crawling under my skin. Thanks to my master's acupuncture, the bug was contained to just one arm. I hoped it was a male, or if it laid eggs in my body, I really would consider amputation. From the continent to the north, it was at least 15 days round trip. Xie had hardly rested since the outbreak began. What if he collapsed on the road? I had heard the northern frontier was full of high, treacherous mountains. The snow hadn't melted, and there were fierce winds. What if he slipped while climbing? I didn't dare think about it, afraid my thoughts would become a curse. I looked at the flickering candle flame and imagined I saw his face. 3 more days passed. My master had to continue using acupuncture. I was drowsy most of the time, sleeping for hours at a time. I heard someone say, General Xia is back. Only 7 days. How could he have returned so quickly? I heard my master call my name, but I couldn't open my eyes. It's good that she's asleep. Give her some more anesthetic so she won't wake up during the procedure. My master's voice was faint. Is she all right? I heard a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. I struggled to open my eyes and finally saw a glimmer of light. I met Xie Jian's gaze and smiled. Then the anesthetic took effect. and I fell asleep again. The treatment was similar to that for regret, fighting poison with poison. But the bug was a living thing. It liked to live in the gallbladders of snakes. And the Qing Shuang snake's gallbladder that Xie Jian had brought was its preferred host. So my master made an incision on my wrist, held the gallbladder to the wound, and the bug emerged. I slept for another 3 days before fully waking. My master said I was out of danger, that I was lucky. The 7th day was the last day he could have stopped the bug from reaching my heart. Xie Jian had returned just in time. The camp no longer needed us. Rest a few more days, and we can go back to Yunjing. My master covered me with a blanket and packed his medicine box. Master, have my senior disciples return to the capital? Yes. All the doctors sent out have returned. They had been away for over a month. I decided to find out what had happened. Lu Jiujuan provided the answer. The doctors had been sent to remote towns where many people had fevers, though not severe, but the local magistrates wouldn't let them come back. He said quietly. Why? Probably to hide the truth after things calmed down. He continued. Miss Xiao, it's interesting how this poison manifests differently in different people. You were exposed directly to the bug, so you were critical within a day. The soldiers who drank poisoned water were less severe. The poison diluted. The common people with fevers were also mild, not as severe as in the camp. Maybe because it was even more diluted. I was stunned. You don't mean to say someone was experimenting on them? He quickly interrupted. I'm not saying that. Just guessing. But the timing is too coincidental. The mass fevers in the countryside just ended. Then the outbreak here. And then the emperor suddenly falls seriously ill. I don't want to think too deeply about it. By the way, where is General Xia? I haven't seen him since I woke up. You're looking for him. Lu Jiujuan smiled meaningfully. I nodded. I want to thank him. He laughed even more. Before you thank him, let me tell you what's been happening in the city. Xie Jian, after returning from the north, had ridden hard to Yunjing. By then, the crown prince had released Xie Jin from house arrest, claiming it had been a friendly visit, not a confinement. But it was clearly a warning to Prince Anjing that both his sons were in his hands. Xie Jian had submitted several memorials. Since the viper bug came from the northern frontier and had been used in the Chongjin army camp, it was hard not to suspect collusion with the enemy, a very serious charge. When the emperor recovered, he was furious and demanded to know why the crown prince hadn't reported the matter immediately, why he hadn't sent imperial physicians to help. The crown prince said the doctors had been busy with the emperor, so they had no time for the camp, and besides, they had the doctors from Jishitang. But the emperor wasn't fooled. Although the collusion couldn't be proven, suspicion was enough. You know who the crown prince blamed. Who else? That poor scapegoat, young Marquis Mo. It was discovered that the families of the captured Song Yan were being held by Mo Yao's men, forced to do his bidding. Letters to the frontier were found in Mo Yao's study. They weren't about collusion, just business correspondence with merchants selling viper bugs. The emperor was outraged. Who would have thought that Mo Yao, because of his feud with Xie Jian, would do something so reckless? With solid evidence, he was sentenced to death and imprisoned. The Marquis of Xuanyang's family was implicated and exiled to the frontier. The crown prince is ruthless, Lu Jiujuan remarked. After all Mo Yao has done for him, and the Marquis is a relative of the crown princess. No mercy at all. Prince Anjing's faction didn't lose anyone, but the Marquis of Xuanyang is finished. The crown prince is no fool. I understand all that. But what does that have to do with thanking Xie Jian? Mo Yao is going to die. Aren't you happy? Lu Jiujuan smiled even more. Yes. Borrowed eyes see differently. But Sunan won't be back at the camp for a few more days. He'll be back just before you leave. He then saluted me formally. Dr. Xiao. Before you leave, I formally thank you. 1. For saving the soldiers from the plague. 2. For helping Xie Jian. 2 days later, I saw Xie Jian outside my tent. Seeing him, I felt an unexpected sense of satisfaction. He greeted me warmly. Dr. Xiao, are you fully recovered? Yes. Completely. I paused, then said sincerely, General Xia, thank you for finding the medicine. Advisor Lu said you rode through 5 horses to get back in time. I don't know how to thank you. He smiled. Don't say that. You were dragged into this because of me, harmed by those who wanted to harm the Chongjin army. I did what I had to do. I'm just glad you're okay. After a few days, he was being polite again. A military doctor approached with a medicine box. General, it's time for your medicine. You're injured. He nodded and was about to leave. I turned to the doctor. I have something else to say to the general. I'll give him the medicine. Xie Jian said nothing, and the doctor handed me the box. The deputy commander's tent was larger than usual. He removed his shirt. His strong back was a map of old and new scars. 6 inches from his collarbone, slanting to his shoulder, was a fresh wound. How could he have made it back safely from such a dangerous place in such a hurry? I removed the old bandage and applied powder to the healing wound. His breath was warm on my head. We were standing a bit close. General, do you not care about your own safety on the battlefield? What do you mean? I've heard that experienced fighters can control where and how severely they are wounded. Surely you, a seasoned general, know this. Yet all your wounds are in vital areas. A small difference and you could be dead. I paused. Why do you do this to yourself? He was silent, looking at me for a long time. Miss Xiao, did you see the Naiha Bridge? He asked. It seemed out of nowhere. Then I realized he was asking about the story I had told him in the palace. No, I was still barely alive. He smiled. You said that the longing of the living can prevent the dead from crossing. Yet I've been on the brink of death several times and never seen her. Perhaps my longing isn't strong enough. Or perhaps she has already been reincarnated. Only one person in the world still misses her. Only Xie Jian. I was unsettled. After bandaging him, I didn't leave immediately. Thank you for saving me. He dressed and said casually. Miss Xiao, you're thanking me again. I told you. That's not what I mean. I interrupted. Xie Jian. I mean, this time, you really saved me. When I returned, Madame Xiao held me and cried. Sire, you've lost so much weight. Oh, my precious girl. I thought she would scold me. But she didn't. The Duke of Xiao lectured me sternly. From now on, tell us before you go out. Do you know how worried your parents were? I nodded repeatedly, apologizing. He then smiled and patted my shoulder. You have courage. You truly are my daughter. My nose stung, and I buried my face in Madame Zhao's shoulder, sobbing. Su Yongwei had woken up long ago. Her wounds healed but scarred. She was very thin and thanked me profusely. When I told her I would send her back to Jizhou, her eyes filled with tears. She said she had been imprisoned by Mo Yao for 3 years. Every winter, he would beat her with a whip, cut her with a knife, then immediately apply medicine, so the wounds would never heal. Su Yining died in winter. So Mo Yao torments me in winter. Report him to the authorities, I said. Although he was already sentenced to death, one more charge wouldn't matter. She shook her head. She didn't know he was in prison. He's right. This is what I owe Miss Su. I took her place. So I must atone. Watching her bitter, suffering smile, I felt no satisfaction. On the day she left, the weather was fine. Miss Xiao, I will send you fine cloth to thank you. Looking at the sky, she said sadly, I'm not coming back to Yunjing. Years ago, she had been driven out of Yunjing for loving Mo Yao too much, and had returned because she couldn't let go. Beginning 3 years of torment, she said Mo Yao regretted his choice, regretted not saving his wife. He claimed to love Su Yining, but only realized it after she died. He took his anger out on her. I didn't think so. He loved her because he could blame her. If he had chosen me, he would have hated me after Su Yongwei died. People value what they lose. Memories are idealized. My death made me untouchable in his heart. Even our bitterest arguments become golden memories. The same would have happened with Su Yongwei. On the day of my coming-of-age ceremony, it snowed a little. It was early spring, a strange time for snow. I hadn't expected Lu Jiujuan to visit. He brought gifts from Prince Anjing, who was far away and couldn't come in person. Miss Xiao, what are your true feelings towards Sunan? I wasn't surprised. He had come to ask about this. After learning that I had confessed my identity, he had hoped things would progress between us and had urged Xie Jian to propose. But Xie Jian had told him not to be ridiculous. I don't get it. Sunan has dreamed of marrying you, but now he does nothing. I think the problem must be with you. He asked. Don't you like him? I did. How could anyone not feel something after learning all he had done? I owed Mo Yao nothing, but I owed Xie Jian too much. So you like each other? That's perfect. But because I owe him so much, I can't just respond carelessly to his feelings. I said, how much of my feeling is gratitude? I can't tell. It wouldn't be fair to him if I married him out of gratitude. Lu Jiujuan seemed to understand, but not fully. I'm not trying to pressure you. But do you have to think so hard about it? Like is like. Dislike is dislike. I liked Xie, but not enough to be confined to a household. Not enough to match his deep devotion. That evening, Madame Xiao and I were embroidering. Sire, I never thought I'd see you come of age, she said, choked with emotion. You were so frail as a baby. I was so afraid you wouldn't survive. I never thought this little girl would grow up to be healthy and become a doctor. During my days as Xiaoningzi, I truly felt her parents' love. But I couldn't face it. I was a fraud. I wasn't their daughter. Mother. Actually. Look. The snow had stopped. She stood and walked to the window. This snow is strange. I hope the new willow shoots don't freeze. I never brought it up again. I think she already knew. The day before his execution, Mo Yao escaped from prison. I thought he was trying to save himself. Instead, he came looking for me. He burst into Jishitang and kidnapped me. Where is Su Yongwei? He was disheveled, his prison uniform torn. A month ago, he had looked down on everyone. He took me to a ramshackle hut and held a shard of porcelain to my throat. Tell me, or I'll kill you. You tortured her. Why are you looking for her now? I couldn't understand why he acted like he was looking for a partner to die with. She deserves it, he sneered, pressing the shard harder. She must atone for Ninger. I am about to die, and she won't live either. Even in hell, I'll make her crawl, kowtowing every step, to beg Ninger for forgiveness. Ninger, Ninger, so annoying. Mo Yao, you want Su Yongwei to atone. But don't you need to beg for forgiveness too? I had always wanted to ask him this. Weren't you the one who gave up on Su Yining? You made the choice. Why do you hypocritically blame others? Su Yongwei, Xie Jian, the guiltless are sincere in their devotion. The guilty try to shift blame. He twisted the truth to make Xie Jian believe he had killed me. He tortured Su Yongwei and blamed everything on her. He was enraged. But I didn't stop. You don't really think your problem was Su Yongwei, do you? Stop pretending to be devoted. If you hadn't saved her, you would have tormented and imprisoned Su Yining too. You love no one but yourself. Enough. He grabbed my throat. What do you know? Ninger loved me. She wouldn't blame me. She would understand I had no choice. He was truly mad. I held onto his fingers. Footsteps approached. I had scattered medicine powder on the way. The doctors would have reported my kidnapping. The streets were full of soldiers looking for him. The door burst open. Xie Jian rushed in and punched him to the ground. He had been in charge of escorting him to execution and had been searching the city. Are you okay? He looked me over, then hit Mo Yao again. Dazed, Mo Yao saw Xie Jian wiping blood from my neck and laughed wildly. Ninger, look. Xie Jian has changed his heart. He claimed to love you. Said he would never remarry. But he's already in love with someone else. He glared at Xie Jian, defiant. Xie Sunan, I married her before you, and I'll see her before you too. Then he grabbed the porcelain shard and stabbed himself in the neck. Blood sprayed on the wall. He leaned back with a sigh. Ninger, I'm coming to see you and our child. We'll be together forever. They say a dying man's words are sincere. Perhaps his were. But I couldn't stand his self-righteous, dramatic death. You won't see her. His blood pooled on the floor. I've been back for a long time. His eyes flew open, full of despair. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came. I told you. I leaned close to his ear and said what I had said 3 years before. I hate you. Epilogue. In the deep green of the willow trees, Xie Jian came to say goodbye. I'll welcome you in the city when you return victorious, I said. He smiled. He said he used to dream that I came to him, crying, blaming him for killing me. After hearing about the river of forgetfulness, he dreamed that I asked him to stop thinking of me. I let him. Xie Jian often wondered why, among so many wandering souls, heaven had chosen me to return. Then Lu Jiujuan told him, you climbed the mountain temple to pray for her. Only then did I realize that chance was something you had begged for. He was surprised and blushed. I owe you so much. I could never repay it. I thought for a moment. Until I fulfill my duties to my parents, I will stay in Yunjing. If you still want to marry me. If you ask, I will. Ah Ning. His voice was gentle, like ripples on a lake. You owe me nothing. Everything I did willingly. Besides, a woman doesn't have to marry a man just to repay him. I know you have things you want to do. You want to travel, like Master Chen, to sample every herb and write medical texts. I don't want to trap you in a household, wasting your life. Two people can love each other without being together. Don't feel obligated. The call of the bugle sounded. The city gates opened. The Changjin army marched toward the restless border. I suddenly remembered what he had said the day I revealed myself. See, 3 years isn't that long. Extra story. In the 4th year after the death of Duke Xiao and his wife, Su Yining began her journey. Before she died, Madame Xiao held her hand, looking at her face with fondness. For many years, Su Yining never again considered telling them she wasn't their daughter. Madame Xiao knew. She knew that the body no longer held her child. But in life, some things don't need to be pursued. You've worked hard, were her last words to him. Su Yining was now 25. Years of study had made her an excellent doctor, and people came from afar to seek her treatment. That year, she said goodbye to her master and senior disciples and left Yunjing to do what she had long planned. By day, she climbed mountains, gathering herbs. By night, she wrote by candlelight, compiling medical texts. In her spare moments, she thought of Xie. They always said, goodbye. Now she was traveling the world. Could he still find her? 5 years ago, Prince Anjing had died. Xie inherited the title, naturally becoming the commander of the Changjin army. The emperor gave him great autonomy, and he proved worthy, winning many battles. The great continent entered a period of prosperity. Then, a year ago, the emperor died. The crown prince took the throne. His first act was to take away Xie military command. The new emperor, unlike his predecessor, was threatened by Xie power. His position became precarious. Su Yining once received a letter from him, full of everyday details. One line made her laugh. Since you're my old acquaintance, we're a perfect match. Lu Jiujuan didn't understand why they didn't just get together. Seeing him smile foolishly at her letters, Xie said, whether Ah Ning wants to marry or not, I cannot. He knew that war made his life fleeting. He didn't want his Ah Ning to become a widow. Besides, she had her own convictions. Ah Ning, Ah Ning, Ah Ning. All that practice wasn't for nothing. Lu Jiujuan remembered the 15-year-old Xie practicing how to greet her. He thought, Miss Su, was too formal. He laughed at him for wanting to get closer when he couldn't even speak to her. When he heard Mo Yao call her Ninger, he decided to call her Ah Ning, but he was too shy, and when he saw her, he could only say, Miss Su. Every time he said it, he added silently, Ah Ning. Now, he could finally call her that openly, without fear of being disliked, without fear of someone else calling her that. At 34, Xie resigned his commission. The new emperor hypocritically lamented the loss of a great general. Xie had no regrets. He had served his country well. That same year, Lu Jiujuan married. His bride was a young woman he had found on the battlefield, even more talkative than him. When they were together, they sounded like a flock of sparrows. Xie wished his good friend happiness. Looking at the full moon, he wondered if Ah Ning was looking at it too. A half-drunk Lu Jiujuan came over to him. Missing Miss Su. He smiled slyly. Want to know where she is? Xie eyes lit up, and he nodded eagerly. Lu Jiujuan pressed a note into his hand and hiccuped. Don't say I only enjoy my own happiness and forgot about you. Su Yining was deep in the mountains, collecting herbs. For convenience, she had rented a small wooden cabin at the foot of a mountain. It was comfortable. Aside from the many mosquitoes, she had only written a small part of her medical text. She still had many places to go, many herbs to see. Walking back to the cabin, she saw smoke rising from its chimney from a distance. Had it caught fire? She hurried anxiously. Through the wooden fence, she saw a tall, strong man in the yard, frantically trying to do something. He turned at the sound, his face smudged with soot. He looked at her, scratched his cheek awkwardly, and smiled sheepishly. Can I travel with you to gather herbs? After listening to this story, what are your thoughts? You are welcome to share your feelings in the comments section. We look forward to hearing your voice.